Hi, everyone. One thing I did not tell Ken yesterday is that yesterday was my 14-year wedding anniversary.
I bet he got cookies.
So I got to give a huge shout out to Dad, who is holding down the front this week with the kids. So if you ask my kids what I do, I work on a computer and I bake cookies. So I'm a software architect at Vibrant Credit Union, where I'm building the mobile app for the Vibrant Coffee House and Kitchen. So if you're ever in Des Moines, Iowa, or Moline, Illinois, stop by and see us and grab a cup of coffee. So as much as I'd like to say I'm retiring, I mean, I'm tired, aren't we all? I still have 30 years left. App Center, on the other hand, has only 6 months. If you haven't heard the announcement, Microsoft made the announcement earlier this year that App Center will be retiring in March of 2025. App Center, for those of you who might not have used it or don't know what it is a cloud-based platform that combines a lot of the services that we as mobile developers use into one space. That includes building your mobile apps, testing them, distributing them, code push, so that you don't have to deal with those pesky app stores, as well as analytics and diagnostics. Now, we don't really know why Microsoft decided to retire it. Some guy named Jamin, I think some of you might know him, wrote a blog post a couple of months ago where his theory was that App Center, a lot of the services that it provided were free for all of us. And that just was not a very sustainable business model. Now, luckily, even though it is retiring, there are a lot of options out there from Expo, Application Services, Circle CI, and there are actually 2 sponsors here today that do offer DevOps for mobile apps, Runway and Tramline. So if you haven't stopped by their booth, make sure you stop by and talk to them. But today, this is going to be the star of our show. So GitHub Actions is a continuous integration and delivery tool that allows you to build and deploy your mobile applications. It's composed of workflows, which are automated processes that are built in YAML and are located in a special directory in your GitHub repository. When you're building workflows, there are 3 main things that you need to do. You need to define when, what, and where. When do you want this workflow to run? Those are your events and those are your triggers. Do you want it to run when you push to main? Do you want it to run when you open a pull request? You can also trigger it to run. You can also trigger it to run manually or on a schedule. You also have to define what. What do you want that workflow to do? Those are your jobs, and they're composed of steps. Those steps are essentially the things that the workflow is going to go ahead and run. Those can be actions that are pre-built, or you can write your own scripts. Where is where those actions are going to run. So those are your runners, and those are virtual machines that go through your steps of your jobs and run those on there. There are 2 options for runners. GitHub has GitHub hosted runners. You've got your Ubuntu flavor, your Windows, as well as your Mac OS. But if those don't fit your needs, you can also use a self-hosted runner. So I'm going to be showing the Android and iOS workflow, but before I do that, because we're going to be showing some of the app signing process as part of that, and I don't have enough time to kind of go through that app signing process, Cecilia Martinez gave a fantastic talk last year on signed, sealed, deployed, where she talks a little bit more about that app signing and provisioning process for both Apple and Android. So make sure you check it out, just not right now. Whoops. Is that big enough for everyone? So in here, I have a YAML file that defines an on. So this on up here is my trigger. When do I want this workflow to run? In this case, I want it to run every time I push to main because it is going to be a release build. I can also trigger it manually, and that's what that workflow dispatch is. For my jobs, I have two jobs in this workflow, the first being build and deploy Android, and the second, which we'll see here in a minute, is build and deploy iOS. First thing I define is what do I want to run it on. In this case, I want an Ubuntu latest. There are a few other versions of it that you can use, but it comes pre-installed with certain tools and certain software so that you can kind of hit the ground running. If there are other things that you need to set up on there, you can use Actions. In this case, I'm checking out my repository. I'm setting up Node, I'm setting up Java, and making sure that my environment has all the tools that it needs to be able to bundle that Android app. So once we've set up all that stuff, ran npm install, the next section is where we bundle that AAB or APK. In order to sign it, we need to decode the key store. So a lot of these things are stored in secrets. If you are using GitHub Actions, I highly recommend that you use the GitHub Actions extension, which allows you to see your workflow runs as well as manage your secrets and repository variables. Otherwise, you'd have to do it in the GitHub UI on the web, and it's usable, just a little bit clunky. So we decode the key store. Now that it's on that virtual machine, we can then go ahead and use some of those variables from that key store in order to bundle a release version of our APK, or in this case, AAB. Luckily for Android, that process is really simple. You just need to call bundle release, and it will do all that for you. And then what we do next is that we upload this artifact to two places. Upload artifact, we'll upload it straight to GitHub. And so when you see your workflow build, what it will do is it will save it as an artifact for you to be able to download on your machine if you need to. The other thing that we do is that we upload it to the Google Play console directly. Now, luckily, there is an action out there that somebody built that we can use. The only two things that you need to provide it are your service account JSON, and then you also need what track you want to deploy this to. You can do internal for internal testing, alpha and beta for open and closed testing in the Google Play Store. And there you have it. That is the Android piece of it. Next is iOS. The process for iOS is very similar to Android. You'll notice one of the first differences is that we run it on a macOS runner. One thing I wanted to point out with macOS is that with Apple, you are required to build your apps on Xcode 15. But up until this week, the Mac OS runners did not have Xcode 15 on there by default. And so that step of setting up Xcode to version 15 was needed. But as of Monday, it looks like the Mac OS 13 image already has Xcode 15 on there by default. And then come next Monday, that will be on the Mac OS 14 runner. So if you're using either of those runners, you should be able to not need to set up Xcode 15 on there. Again, similar to Android, you set up your environment with all the things that you need, your Cocoa pods, you install your pods and all that stuff. Now here's where it gets a little bit, whoops. So I had to zoom out because it's very long. But you'll notice that compared to Android, iOS is a little bit more lengthy. There are two ways to do it. You can use an action that's already in GitHub Actions Marketplace, or you can do it yourself. This one is copied directly from the GitHub documentation, so you know it's good. Again, you plug in a couple of secrets, which are defined in your repository secrets. Those are your build certificate, your provisioning profile, your keychain password, and things like that. So once you've installed all those things on that virtual machine, you archive your iOS app, and you do that with Xcode build archive. And then you export that IPA using Xcode build archive, and then you upload it. I do the same thing here where I upload it straight to the GitHub Actions result, and then I upload it to TestFlight. In order to upload to TestFlight, you need an API key that allows you to upload to TestFlight. But then once you have that, you can just run xrun alt tool upload app, and that will send it straight to TestFlight. So some of the nice things about using GitHub Actions is that it's built into GitHub. So if your repository lives in GitHub, then using GitHub Actions is kind of a no-brainer. It offers a lot of flexibility and customizations. So if you have workflows that need special things that are not provided out of the box by some of the other services, you can kind of go in there and customize it the way that you want it. Their documentation is fantastic. It's very comprehensive. And if there's anything that you can't find in the documentation, there are a lot of people on Stack Overflow and Reddit who will happily help you or not help you, depending on how you ask your question. And there are a lot of actions in the Actions marketplace. It has things for all sorts of languages, not just iOS and Android specific. So if you're ever looking for something before you build it, try the marketplace, and if it's not there, then you can go ahead and build it. So with everything that, even though it does have all of its advantages, there are some downsides too. Raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by a CI/CD pipeline. Yep. So we all know how painful those could be. This is just kind of a short example of what a lot of the commit logs look like if you're working on a CI/CD pipeline. Mine is 10 times worse than that, but we're not going to tell anybody. So some of the things or some of the challenges that you can encounter with using GitHub Actions is learning curve. YAML is kind of like one of those dirty words where people really, really hate it. So if you don't like YAML, I'm sorry. There's a lot of maintenance involved in it. So because you are writing all of these things yourself, you need to make sure that if you are using an action, you need to be using the newest version of an action, or if something breaks, you need to kind of go in there and fix it. And with those third-party actions, there's always the worry of security and reliability. We kind of depend on those maintainers to maintain those actions. Otherwise, you could get things like build warnings for things like deprecated node versions that are being used in some of those actions. Or worst case scenario, you could get build failures that you'd have to go in and try to figure out. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the team at Infinite Red for having me here and putting on an amazing conference. If you want to talk about GitHub Actions, cookies, and all things baking, I'd be happy to talk to you guys afterwards. All right, thank you.